HeartGold, SoulSilver. Great remakes, great games, and the OG games aren't half bad either. But that's not why we're here, so let's get to it. We want to see what the minimum number of battles that are required to beat this game is. And by beat this game, I mean defeat Red at the summit of Mount Silver. You know, the credits roll and we get the end pop up. The rules are pretty simple. They're lifted as well as the video idea itself from J-Rose 11's video covering OG Gold and Silver minimum battles. You can find that linked in the description. But in this version, there are a few caveats. Number 1, no items in battle. Held items are fine, but we can't use things like potions, X items, etc. If we did, we can simply set up and sweep or stall out battles. Number 2, no catching of wild Pokemon unless it's for HM purposes or a trade. With the Pokemon we're choosing, it would be impossible to complete the game otherwise. Now, these Pokemon can be in our party, but if they were to participate in battle, they just have to not attack and get KO'd. Number 3, no fighting a trainer unless we absolutely have to, i.e. we can't progress the game unless we do so. Now, there may be instances where there is a choice about who we fight, with our choice ideally being the trainer with fewer Pokemon. I'll be keeping a record of the battles on screen. In the description, you'll also find a list of all the trainers in a Google Doc, if you're interested. Number 4, no save states in battle. This challenge is already hard enough and honestly not consistent, so for things like the Elite Four, save states between them may be used for testing purposes, as in devising a strategy. Then we have to run through them without saving in between, and that's it. Those are the rules. Next, the Pokemon. We're choosing Lugia because of its great defense and special defense stats. Any Pokemon that we choose has a high chance of getting a beating this run. However, Lugia has a few glaring weaknesses, namely to Ice, Dark, and Electric, which will certainly become a problem later. But hey, maybe you'd pick differently. So let me know below. Right, we have our Pokemon, and we have our rules, so let's get started. We kick off our adventure by picking Lugia. I use the randomizer tool to insert Lugia in place of Cyndaquil. This is so that when we battle our rival, he has a Totodile, which eventually learns moves like Ice Fang. Now, we want a good Lugia. I'm going for a timid nature because its special attack is where most of our moves will lie. IV wise, it's complicated, so I settled on anything that boasted high special attack or special defense. Lugia's initial moveset leaves a lot to be desired, starting with Weather Ball and Whirlwind, the lower PP of the former becoming rather annoying in the early game. After we choose Lugia, we can simply run from any wild encounters, with our first mandatory battle being our rival. Let's just call him Silver. Not worth showing. Lugia curb stomps Totodile. For now at least. Originally, Sprout Tower was an optional location that you could use to gain some experience before taking on Faulkner. Now, however, it is mandatory, and there are a few trainers to be found there. What's annoying about Weather Ball is because of its low PP, you constantly have to backtrack to a center to heal up. Still, nothing noteworthy until, however, we reach the monk at the top. Now, at Faulkner's gym. Unlike in OG Gold, you can skip the two trainers here and head straight for Faulkner himself. The battle is mostly trivial, and we do get the extremely valuable Roost TM. One of Lugia's greatest strengths is stalling, and this move will be invaluable later on. However, we won't be utilizing it just yet. With Faulkner dealt with, we grab the mystery egg from the professor's aide in the shop, as well as picking up the Slugma egg. Slugma and its flame body may come in handy later. With the badge and the aide dealt with, we could head south towards Union Cave. However, we require something first, something we can only get on a Tuesday, and through the magic of changing the clock, we can get the Twisted Spoon from Tuscany on Route 29. We'll have Lugia hold that when it eventually learns a psychic move. We also pick up a Geodude so that we can teach it Rock Smash and pick up some items along the way. Back on Route 32, regardless of which way you choose to go, all battles can be avoided. Out of Union Cave, you end up in Azalea Town. Bugsy can't be challenged yet, so I opted to deal with the Rocket Slowpoke well. This all goes well, but there are several mandatory battles here. However, you'll notice that even though we reach level 9, which is when Lugia learned Gust, taking on Bugsy isn't the play. Attempting to tackle Bugsy at this level results in Scyther absolutely giving Lugia a spanking. We're at level 13, Scyther's at 17, and it has great attack. Now, what Scyther likes to do is firstly go with Focus Energy, which increases its chance to crit. Then, it'll often go for a few rounds of Leer before hitting you with U-turn, which will bring out either Metapod or Kakuna. Not to mention, it has quick attack too, which can finish you off if you're within range. Oh yeah, you can get poisoned by Kakuna too, which is always fun. Gust does decent damage, maybe around 1/4 of Scyther's HP, but it's not great at this level. Plus, Scyther has a Citrus Berry and Bugsy can use a Super Potion. Honestly, at this level, you're just putting yourself in a position for the battle to be more difficult than it needs to be, so it makes more sense fighting the rival first. So, what does the battle look like when we've gained a few levels? Well, it looks a lot better, like you might expect. We're now at level 15, and we've learned Dragon Rush, which does around 1/3 of Scyther's health. However, Dragon Rush through the entirety of this run is not a very useful move. Funnily enough, in a previous playthrough where I attempted to do this with a Totodile, Bayleaf's setup of Reflect, Razor Leaf and Synthesis was a total wall and made this battle a giant pain in the ass. Anyway, with Lugia, the rival goes down and we can take on Bugsy, who proves to be a lot more consistent. Also, you can get through this gym with just one mandatory trainer. If you have just one Pokemon on you, the twins battle can be skipped. In the successful battle, we were in a better position to just keep using Gust to whittle down Scyther and get through those Super Potions. Eventually, Scyther goes down, Bugsy's Metapod and Kakuna are an absolute joke then. Done and done. With all that done, we can herd the Farfetch'd in Ilex Forest, meet one of the Kimono Girls, and then teach Lugia Headbutt. Though its prowess is not physical, having a move with more than 10 PP is helpful. On to Route 34 and Goldenrod, and there are no mandatory trainers on Route 34. Even when we reach Goldenrod, we technically do not have to proceed along Route 35 towards the National Park, nor do we have to battle the trainers in the underground because they disappear later on when Team Rocket takes over the radio tower. Spoiler. As you can already see, the paucity of not just EXP but money adds another layer of difficulty to the run, which is why picking up anything like nuggets, pearls, anything that we can sell is so important. After getting the radio card, we'll pick up Kenya the Spearow from the guard at the North Gate. As an aside, it is worth addressing Kenya, not just in reference to the video that inspired this run, but in general. Kenya does benefit from the boost in EXP, which you get from traded Pokemon. And some might believe that because of this boost, it's worth focusing solely on Kenya. And while Kenya may prove an asset for a while, like a leper running a marathon, it gradually falls apart before the finish line. Kenya's move pool isn't robust enough for what lies ahead, nor are its stats, at least in my experience. So, while a member of the party, I won't be focusing too much attention on it. Another point worth mentioning is the game corner. There are some great TMs, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Flamethrower, but I could not bring myself to grind the games to get them. I know people love Voltorb Flip. I am not one of those people. Just thought I'd mention that. Finally, we want to catch a Drowsy so that we can trade it to the man in the Goldenrod department store. While we won't be using the traded Pokemon, a Machop, it does come with the very valuable Macho Brace. For those that don't know, the Macho Brace doubles any EVs you receive from battle, which will be invaluable because of the very few battles we encounter. Now, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and if I had known that the majority of Pokemon were giving out mostly physical attack and physical defense EVs, I probably would have not bothered with the Macho Brace. What happened was, later on, when I tried to stuff some vitamins down Lugia's throat, it did not want them because the EVs had been maxed out, and this probably did make things more difficult in the endgame, but we will reach that bridge later. In Whitney's gym, there are just 2 mandatory trainers, and as has been said by many a player, Whitney can be considered a difficult battle. In other runs, with other types of Pokemon, she isn't as daunting as before. Her Milk Tank is still bulky, and it also has Milk Drink, which restores its HP. What is with the first 2 gym leaders having moves that can restore their health? Anyway, we didn't get off to a great start. Her Clefairy managed to pull off some clutch moves sometimes. In the first instance, we had a Shockwave directly followed by Thunderbolt, not to mention an instance where it got off an Icy Wind. The biggest issue with Clefairy was that it was taking so many attacks to whittle down. What would invariably happen was that it would get within healing range, Whitney would use a Super Potion, and we'd be back to square one, attacking with Gust or Weather Ball. While always managing to get by Clefairy, Milk Tank was the real issue. You think it'd go straight for rollout, but it seemed to prefer a combo of Stomp and Milk Drink. Again, with our damage output rather low against such a bulky Pokemon, you'd be trapped in a Sisyphean cycle of getting Milk Tank down to half HP before it just healed, and it would always outlast Lugia. Plus, Stomp had a chance to flinch too. So a rethink was in order. Money is still tight, so I opted to not purchase a pricey TM like Blizzard or Thunder. Instead, I thought I may be able to outlast Milk Tank with the use of Reflect. However, we still ran into the same issues. Yes, I could have comboed it with Roost, but I'm really trying to save that TM for later on, some other strategies and as a last resort. However, much like we did with the Twisted Spoon, there is another way, and it's not from siblings or something like Sharp Beak for Gust. On different days of the week, at the top floor of the department store in Goldenrod, there is a lottery. Tickets are 300 Pokédolls a pop, and the first prize is a TM. On Wednesdays, the prize is Charge Beam. It's a special electric move, 50 base power, but it has a chance of increasing your special attack by 1 stage. With this, it's okay if Clefairy uses a potion because we're gradually increasing our special along the way. Ready for Milk Tank. And when it comes out, we can use the remainder of our charge beams and then finish it off with Weather Ball. Then we make Whitney cry. With Whitney defeated, we can get ourselves the Squirtle Pail. Now you can take the northern route to Sudowoodo, but that would require facing further trainers. So we go all the way back through Union Cave to Azalea Town, where we can also pick up Rock Smash after dealing with the tree. Unfortunately, however, Sudowoodo can be run from, so it won't be joining us. Traditionally, in Ecruteak, things opened up quite a bit at this portion of the game. However, we're funneled into a bit more of a linear path this time around. Off to the right, on Route 42, we can pick up Strength as well as a TM, but it's not worth following that route just yet. We can also say hello to Bill, so we can pick up an EV for Freevee later. And we'll dip into the Kimono Dance Theatre to beat up the grunt and get Surf, which will become a staple for Lugia soon enough. Morty's busy at the Burn Tower, along with Suicune, Hunter Igusign. I do not know how to pronounce that name. And for many a year, I always thought Suicune's name was pronounced Suicide, which I think actually sounds better. You may be looking at the 3 legendary beasts down there and thinking, hey, they'd make a great addition to the party, but under the rules, they are useless. But maybe a run with one of them is worth it. Now, there is a chance to battle the rival here, and it's in this battle we will see one of Lugia's worst matchups, a sign of things to come with the Magnemite. Also, the Gastlian Curse is an automatic reset because Lugia can't survive the battle. Then you can get ridiculous instances of Lugia being confused, combined with being paralyzed. It's just, we can get a few trainer battles in and deal with this later. So, we'll head down Route 38 and 39 to Olivine City. Again, and say it with me, there are no mandatory battles along these routes. The only place that battles are waiting for you is in the Lighthouse. And we have to do this portion of the story sooner or later, so might as well deal with it now. We head up the Lighthouse, fighting only a few trainers along the way who pose no threat, but they do stop us from picking up some items like the Swagger TM. Swagger as a strat is rather inconsistent, and I have used it in other runs, but you kind of feel a little dirty afterwards. At the top, we can see Jasmine, the leader of Olivine City Gym, who tells us this Ampharos are sick. So we can grab some secret medicine from Cyanwood for it later. Now, back to the rival. We've just scraped by with enough levels to face the rival again. While the battle is not smooth sailing by any means, we are able to deal with him and head to the basement of the tower. After seeing the 3 legendary beasts, Morty's gym is now open for business. Because we focused our training on Lugia, it is able to reach level 23 and gain extra sensory. However, even that mixed with the Twisted Spoon is not a recipe for victory. I was expecting a little bit more from Morty. While I imagined that Lugia with extra sensory would sweep his Ghastly and Haunter, I didn't think it would OHKO the Gengar. And even though Gengar gets off a Sucker Punch, extra sensory just sends it straight to the Shadow Realm. For winning, we get the Shadow Ball TM, which will come into play much later on. With Morty defeated, we can head straight to Cyanwood. Previously, you could go to Mahogany Town and complete the Rocket Hideout quest, but not anymore. Across the sea, where there are no mandatory battles, you reach Cyanwood. We pick up Shucky the Shuckle here to be another HM Butler, and finally we grab the secret potion. You can battle Usain here, but that is unfortunately not needed. Those levels would be nice. In Cyanwood Gym, we have Chuck waiting for us under a waterfall. However, there's only one trainer we need to battle before him, and he's at the top left of the gym. With that, we can turn off the waterfall and we can take on Chuck. Much like Morty, Chuck is a first try victory. Its Primate goes down from just 1 extra sensory. The Poliwrath is a bit more of a challenge, however. Extra sensory only does about half damage. Combine that with its health getting restored via a berry, and unless we get a crit, we're looking at 2 more hits to defeat it. We get a Body Slam, thankfully no paralysis. I go for Gust to edge Poliwrath over that halfway point. It then uses Body Slam again, and of course, Lugia gets paralyzed. I then misclicked and went for Gust again, not paying attention. I think it will be okay, however, if I just use another extra sensory, but nope, paralyzed. So I'm getting a little nervous now. Another Body Slam. I'm on 4 HP. Do not want another paralysis. Thankfully, don't get it, and extrasensory knocks Poliwrath out. I think I made that battle a little more difficult than it had to be. After Chuck's dealt with, we can pick up Fly for Kenyaya and head back to Equitique. We could give the secret potion to Jasmine, but her Magnemite rather than her Steelix would roast us. Route 42 and Mahogany Town. Now, with access to Surf, there is no one we need to fight on the way to Mahogany Town. Likewise, upon reaching the town and going up towards the Lake of Rage, there is no one else we need to battle either. We do, however, pick up the TMs for Secret and Hidden Power. You never know when a clutch Hidden Power or Secret Power might come in, so better safe than sorry. Once again, in the original games, you had to battle the Red Gyarados in order to capture it or defeat it. Those were your two options. This time around, however, you can just dip and you still get the red scale. Unfortunate. Next, everybody's favourite part, after meeting Lance at the Lake of Rage, we catch up with him at the faux shop leading into the Rocket Hideout. Now, in the previous games, for a long time, I thought you had to go through every beacon and battle the rockets. However, in this game, like the other one, there is a computer that you can go down to after the first battles. You can then switch that off and it deactivates the lasers. Then, unimpeded, you just head to the next floor. Very few battles and very few trainers are worth talking about because rockets tend to use poison types or normal types, which means Lugia has little trouble taking them out. Hideout over. Next, to Price at Mahogany Gym. This is where I thought things would get a little more interesting. His ice types plus a bulky Pokemon like Dugong and the Piloswine would cause us some issues, not to mention the very few trainers we were able to fight in his gym. However, it turned out not to be the case. Seal does have Icy Wind and the speed drop isn't great, but Extrasensory does more than half, so it's a 2-hit KO. Again, Extrasensory on the Dugong, it has Aurora Beam which does some okay damage. Next up is Piloswine, which immediately goes for Hail, and I know that winter is coming, and I know that my Extrasensories are not going to do as much damage as I hoped. Piloswine recovers with a Berry, uses Blizzard, taking me down to 13 hit points. Then Hail comes along and leaves me with just 6, but one more Extrasensory and Piloswine has been roasted. After Price, it's the Rockets in Goldenrod Radio Tower. We can breeze through this part as Lugia has no issue dealing with them. They are mostly poison and normal again, no issue. Now, when recording this, I totally forgot about Jasmine and was like, oh, we're done with Price, so let's head to Blackthorn. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, the Steel Gym with the Magnemites. Which, like any encounter with a Magnemite, you're gonna get paralyzed, you're gonna get confused, and you're gonna get a Thunderbolt. For the first few attempts, I went for Extrasensory, thinking it may be able to clear both Magnemites out despite not being too effective. It didn't go great. Even switching to Surf wasn't bearing too much fruit either. What you have in most gym battles, it will be pretty obvious, is that weaker Pokemon tend to come out first, which means you get whittled down. Then, when something like Steelix comes out, even though it's less of a threat, it can just use Rock Throw against us, which is effective, but not as much as Thunderbolt. I tried this method a few more times, but it wasn't proving consistent, so in the end, I went and taught Lugia Light Screen to lessen the Thunderbolt damage. With this method, even though I was paralyzed, I still managed to get through the Steelix at 52 HP. It misses Iron Tail, I get paralyzed trying to go for a Surf, then it uses Darude Sandstorm, which is fine, it heals with a Berry, and another Surf, which is a critical, and ends up finishing Steelix off. A tad lucky, but I felt I could have outlasted the Steelix if I had to do it again. With the people of Kanto thankfully being able to listen to the radio again, we set off for Blackthorn City, through Route 44 and the Ice Path. At the city, while most would head downwards to battle some trainers, it's not needed and we can go straight to face Claire at the gym. Claire was no certain victory, that's for sure. We came into the battle at level 38, Gyarados hits us with an Intimidate, we're running with Thunder, Extrasensory, Surf and Dragon Rush. As long as Thunder hits, we'll always one-hit KO the Gyarados. The issues mostly come from the Pokemon that follow it. Dragonair, both of them, will always go for Thunder Wave. The Intimidate we took from before isn't helping us with Dragon Rush too much, but at least the Dragonairs are 2-hit KOs. But because hey, they aren't 1-hit KOs, and we're always paralyzed, Claire's Pokemon can just get too many hits in. That's not even to mention the Kingdra, Claire's most dangerous Pokemon, because we've been paralyzed and have taken significant damage. Anytime we get to Kingdra, we're really low on HP. Then, all Kingdra has to do is use Dragon Pulse or Hydro Pump to finish us off. After the initial hardships, I decided I might as well see if using Blizzard was a more consistent strategy than using Dragon Rush. We still get paralyzed by the Dragonair, and by now I just accepted that as my new reality. The problem with Blizzard is that at Lugia's current level, it's a range. Even in those instances where we got past the 2 Dragonair, we're still too low a level of HP to really make a dent in the Kingdra. I went through a ton of battles. The best you could hope for was maybe getting one good Blizzard off, but you were always paralyzed. And then there was one instance where I came so close with Kingdra on a sliver of health before Claire used a Hyper Potion. Ugh. I was beating my head against a wall. Another time, victory was so close, but she just kept being able to heal the Kingdra. So I relented. I taught Lugia Roost. Now, there may be people who think that, well, you should have done that from the start. And as I said before, I can always go to the move relearner to get back things like Extrasensory or Dragon Rush or whatever. Even Thunder and Blizzard can just be bought, but some moves can't. And I didn't want to be in a position where I was in the late game and I didn't have a move to recover HP. Yes, Lugia learns recover, but it's at a much higher level, and I don't even know if I'm going to be able to reach that level. And we try Claire again, and this time it plays out much like the previous times. Gyarados, Thunder, no problem. Dragonair, Blizzard, 1-hit KO. I think I had the Never Melt Ice equipped too. Second Dragonair comes out, Blizzard miss, and it always seemed to miss one of the Dragonair, so much so I'm sure there were some CPU shenanigans going on. Anyway, paralysis. Finally, after some trying, we get the Blizzard. Just above half HP for the Kingdra. Paralyzed. I know I have to heal and manage to get off a Roost. It uses Smokescreen to lower my accuracy, but my first Thunder hits. We're missing attacks. We're getting paralyzed. It's not going great. Kingdra uses Hyper Beam, putting us at low health. We then get paralyzed on that turn, so I'm trying to get a Roost off, which we just managed to do. I'm still going for Thunders, knowing the accuracy is low, but hoping for a paralysis. Our moves are missing, so I'm going for Roost when I have to. I'm at half HP again and just can't knock it out with an Extrasensory, which is when Claire uses a Hyper Potion. We get stuck in a ludicrous back and forth until something even more ridiculous happens. Kingdra runs out of moves. Pressure, combined with the few PP each move has left it having to use Struggle. So I'm just stuck there, trying to hit it, but nothing is getting through, and it's taking recoil damage. It is ridiculous. In the end, I don't even knock Kingdra out. It punches itself in the face, but after all that trying, I'll take the win where I can get it, and I'm just happy to move on. Man, what a pain in the ass. Previously, after Blackthorn, though you could pick up Ho-Oh or Lugia, they weren't mandatory, nor are they mandatory now, which makes the next part all the more frustrating. Before you dip your toe into the waters of Tojo Falls and Route 27, you must fight the Kimono Sisters and their evolutions. The gimmick with the Kimono Sisters is that each one has an evolution. In the OG games, you fought them earlier and could take the time between battles to go and heal up. Now it's just an annoying gauntlet of battles. First up is the Umbreon. As we all know, Umbreon is bulky. It has the type advantage against Lugia, and its MO is just to annoy the hell out of its opponent with moves like Confuse Ray. So we're there, with Lugia getting spanked by Dark Pulse. I'm trying to get off a Thunder whenever I can, but it decides it doesn't want to hit most of the time. Oh yeah, and the Umbreon has Synchronize, which means if it gets statused, then you get statused. Well, Thunder Paralysis rarely procs anyway, so... but of course... So I'm busy switching between Roost, Light Screen and Thunder where I can until it eventually goes down. And that is just the first battle. Next up is the Espeon. I go for Light Screen and then start whipping out the Extrasensories. Now you may think, why didn't I just equip a berry to deal with the paralysis? No point, because we have a Jolteon coming up anyway, and having the Twisted Spoon equipped for this honestly is more beneficial. Believe me, I tried. So Espeon gets dunked on by Bird. Flareon's next. No Surf, but we will set up another Light Screen. Oh yeah, if we're not paralyzed, Flareon can and will use Will-O-The-Wisp, which is even worse. However, going with our stall strategy, we can take it out. That's 3 down. Fourth is the Jolteon. It is fast and it is annoying. It has a double team. This thing is just going to evade everything. Or we can get a crit with Extrasensory and just dunk on it. I will take it. The final Pokemon is Vaporeon. It can't do much to us. Extrasensory all the way until we knock it out. Done. Get the clear bell, then we have to deal with the burnt tower. All to watch Lugia just fly away. Finally, we can proceed to Tojo Falls and Route 27. Towards Victory Road, there are barely any encounters aside from the rival. Before that, however, we must absolutely pick up the Earthquake TM. Now, you may think, why not just use Earthquake for the Magneton? And the reason is that I know the kind of setup I need for Lance, which means I can only use moves going forward, in most cases, that I can then repurchase or relearn via the move tutor. Earthquake is not one of these. At the time, I was so obsessed with saving it for something later on that I just refused to use it. The funny thing was, I didn't even go with it in the end. But that's for later. Back to the rival. He has a Sneasel. It has Icy Wind, and it can be annoying, but Thunder deals with it soon enough. I decided to teach Lugia Aeroblast on my first attempt because I'm thinking Stab's gonna be great for things later, but low PP and accuracy just made me delete it later on. Anyway, Magneton, you know the drill. It likes to paralyze and use electric moves, but Extrasensory manages to get through it. Next up is the Haunter. It uses Curse. I'm thinking maybe I could hang on, but no. I decide to reset. Not terrible for a blind first run though. So, say you get through the Sneasel, Magneton, Haunter, and Golbat. We're always getting paralyzed by the way or confused. You get past those annoyances and then the bigger annoyance comes along. In Feraligatr. I nearly had this thing the first time I came up against it. It was near full health, using Extrasensory, and it kept getting waterfall flinches until it eventually KO'd me. A successful run looks like getting to Feraligatr with more than half HP, still paralyzed and confused though, getting a roost off a couple of times while using Extrasensory to take care of it. However, we then have the Kadabra, but because we're psychic and can set up a light screen, we can then use Aeroblast to finish it off. Next up, the Elite Four. Before we go and face the Elite Four, however, we need to do a little prep beforehand, like making sure we have the potions and elixirs that we need to regain our PP and health. I also want a few hold items, mainly the Sharp Beak, in case I need to pair it with Lugia's Aeroblast. I chose not to do any further TM hunting for now, or rare candy hunting. I don't plan to use my rare candies until absolutely necessary because we really want to delay them all before facing red later. With that said, we're ready. We start off with Will. He's Dark type. His team consists of Xatu, Jinx, Slowbro, Executor, and a final Xatu. Morty's Shadow Ball is the right play here from the start. On the first Xatu, it's usually a one-hit KO, with the choice specs equipped, I might add. On the Jinx, however, it is not, and it can then use Sweet Kiss, which puts us to sleep, followed by Ice Punch or Shadow Ball to whittle down our health. Now, we can get past the Xatu, but Shadow Ball is a 2-hit KO on the other Xatu, meaning it has a chance to knock us out. Likewise, it also is a 2-hit KO on Executor. Our first exploratory battle ends in a loss. However, to combat the Jinx, I remove the equipped choice specs and go with a Chesto Berry, which will wake me from sleep if I get kissed. In our final run, we use a Shadow Ball, but you'll see that without the choice specs, it's not a 1-hit KO, it's 2 hits. We get hit with a Confuse Ray, but manage to get past Jinx. Jinx goes for Lovely Kiss once, we wake up with the berry, we snap out of confusion, but then Jinx lands us with another Lovely Kiss. Following up with Ice Punch, the second Xatu comes out and starts hitting us with Ominous Wind. Despite Lugia knocking down its health with Shadow Ball, Will uses a full restore, but we get a crit with Shadow Ball, ready for the Executor. Instead of Shadow Ball, I opt to use Aeroblast, which will always 1-hit KO Executor pretty handily, leaving Will with just one Pokemon, Slowbro. Not to mention, our HP isn't looking too bad either. We use Shadow Ball, Slowbro starts using Curse, though it won't do it any good by raising its attack and defense. I try to edge it out of healing range and then go and finish it off with a Shadow Ball. And that's Will. Kind of like Koga was in the original Red and Blue, he is poison focused. His Pokemon consist of the bug type too. However, with all of them being a poison typing bar Forretress, there's very little to talk about. Forretress is perhaps the only point of contention because it's bulkier than the others. Extrasensory, however, tears through all of his Pokemon. It gets to Ariados, it gets to Muk, Venomoth, Crobat, and for Forretress we mainly stick to Aeroblast. Next up is Bruno. We still have Extrasensory, so it's Psychic all the way for the likes of Hitmontop, Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, even Onix and Machamp. It easily deals with Hitmontop, who does like to get a quick attack in though. Next up is Onix, again extra sensory, and the same for Hitmonchan. However, his Machamp is not a one-hit KO, not to mention he also has a few full restores he's willing to use. Now, what you have to be careful with is that his Machamp can use Rock Slide on rare occasions, and that critting can do a decent bit of damage to Lugia. In the end, however, Lugia prevails. Next up is Karen. This is where we begin to stumble. As we've seen, Umbreon is a tank. Its frustrating combination of Confuse Rate, which is 100% accurate, along with Double Team, makes it quite the troll. I originally came into the battle with Aeroblast, Extra Sensory, Roost, and Reflect. Already you can see one of these moves is going to be pretty redundant against an Elite Four member who specializes in dark Pokemon. Agatha also has several annoying Pokemon. We've touched on the Umbreon, but said nothing about the Gengar, which has Destiny Bond, a move that KOs if it gets it off. Not to mention her final Pokemon, Houndoom, that has Nasty Plot, Dark Pulse, Flamethrower, and Crunch. A pretty terrible set of moves against Lugia. More often than not, I could make it past the Umbreon with Aeroblast, but you could already see that it's not a viable strategy in the long run. Oh, and on my very first attempt, we got hit with Gengar's Destiny Bond. RIP. So I give it a few more goes until I start getting walled by the Houndoom. There's no way I can let this thing use Nasty Plot followed up by Dark Pulse. We're just not surviving that. In other attempts, I delete Aeroblast and go with Thunder, knowing I'll need it for Lance anyway. Didn't turn out great. Went with Thunder and Charge Beam, hoping to build up the special attack. No good. So I tried Charge Beam and Dragon Pulse, thinking I could go and use that combo on Lance too. However, for Charge Beam to even do anything, it first has to hit, and with Umbreon doing its best and succeeding not to be hit, my plan is seeming a little weak. Even when we do get through sometimes, we still can't one-shot the Houndoom, and after a Nasty Plot, it always gets the KO. So, in the end, I really was not proud of how I ended up getting through Karen in my final run. I rolled out with Charge Beam, Surf, Roost, and Reflect. I started the battle with Reflect. Then, I started with the Charge Beams, hoping to get that special boost, re-upping Reflect when I had to, healing when I had to, dealing with confusion when I had to. Charge Beam still isn't great, but it gets some hits in. I don't care if I hit all the Charge Beams, only that I manage to get some of the special attack boosts that can help me one-shot the rest of the Pokemon. Umbreon is super tedious. I just keep trying to go with Surf and hit it until eventually I do. Then, when Gengar comes out, my special is high enough to one-shot it. I pop up another Reflect against the Murkrow, allowing me to then take it out with a Surf. Then, finally, when Houndoom comes out, one Surf is all it takes, and I'd totally forgotten that she had a Vileplume. Well, it's not too effective against us anyway. It has Petal Dance, which does very little damage and then leaves it confused, so all that is required is to use Surf to finally get the KO. Now, in hindsight, what I probably should have done here is go and get Aerial Ace from Mount Mortar to deal with the accuracy issue, instead of being stubborn and just trying to brute force my way through. Another point to mention is that I can't get TMs from the Battle Frontier or anything like that. Not just because Lugia can't participate, but because it'd be technically breaching the rules that we have set up. Those battles aren't mandatory, so we go off to Lance. As we've already seen, we don't really have a great time against Dragon Pokemon. Again, we've got Gyarados with Intimidate, but we're specifically rolling with special attacks in this battle, so it shouldn't really affect us. Move choices are important. I went with Thunder, Surf, Roost, and Blizzard, which I upped the PP for because it has lower accuracy. Obviously, Lance's Pokemon are pretty annoying. Gyarados has Ice Fang, which we're weak to. Aerodactyl has Rock Slide, which can cause us to flinch. It also has Thunderfang and Crunch too. The Dragonites have Thunder Wave, Thunder, and Blizzard between them. And Charizard even has Shadow Claw. This is not a great matchup. There was a lot of experimentation beforehand, but the above moveset was what I'd settled on to be the most consistent. Now, the previous battle footage is from when I went through the Elite Four without saving and then lost to Lance. So I had to, obviously, go through again and capture a battle where I actually won. In our winning battle, we start with Thunder, it hits, knocking Gyarados out. For Aerodactyl, I go for Blizzard, which is not a one-hit KO. It uses Rock Slide, and I get flinched. I go for Roost, then Blizzard, which ends up missing. It continues to use Rock Slide, and I think it's about time I stop missing attacks, so decide to use Surf. it takes off around half of Aerodactyl's HP. I decide to preemptively heal, but it manages to get off a Thunder Fang and Crunch before I can, but thankfully, I bring it back. Then, I finally go for Surf, knocking it out. Next up is the first Dragonite, which is much simpler. One Blizzard is all we need to take it out. And on the second Dragonite, we also get the Blizzard hit. When Charizard comes out, I go for Surf, but I'm not convinced the damage it's doing will be enough for a 2-hit KO, so I instead try for the Thunder hit. Obviously, it's not quite complying, so I decided to heal up between hits until I'm finally able to get the Thunder off that I need, which is enough to knock it out. Just one Pokemon left, Lance's final Dragonite. I go for Blizzard, it hits, and not only that, it crits. It does more than enough damage to send it packing, and with that, we've beaten the Elite Four. Now we can head to Johto via the SS Aqua, and while you can tackle the gyms in pretty much any order, given our low level, it makes more sense to take the path of least resistance. Specifically, we want to avoid Sabrina and Surge for now. There are some story beats that we have to deal with first, namely the power plant. So after visiting there, we can then go to Cerulean, deal with the rocket in the gym, get the part, then cockblock Misty 360. In a gym, there are no mandatory trainers. Now, Thunder works just fine against the majority of a team when it hits. I also have the Magnet equipped, but the problem caused by my current moveset comes when facing Quagsire. As an aside, I've never known a Pokemon game where my Pokemon have been confused this many times. It seems like every single gym leader has a confusion ability. Anyway, upon reaching Quagsire, it keeps using Amnesia to raise its special defense, thus making Psychic pretty useless. Its ground typing makes Thunder useless too, and its Water Absorb ability makes Surf useless. Now, I have no choice but to waste all of my Surfs, Thunders, and was planning to do the same with Psychic, when, at the end, with my final power point, I get a critical hit. Ugh. Now, for Janine, Extrasensory really has been the MVP for this run. It deals with Crobat, the Ariados, the Weezing, the other Ariados, and finally the Venomoth. For Brock, we can take out Graveler with Surf. For Omastar, we just use the Thunder. Oh, it has Ancient Power. That's pretty effective. Okay, just one Thunder should sort it out. Oh, Ancient Power again, and the 10% stat boost. Pretty lucky. Okay, Thunder should hit this time and we're fine. Ah, it's not a one-hit KO. Okay, it's going to use Ancient Power again, isn't it? Wow, styled on by an Omastar. Let's try that again. Graveler, Surf, Omastar, Thunder. Nice. Now that's the damage range I was expecting. Maybe a Magnet would have made it a one-shot. I go for a Psychic just to finish it off. Brock decides to use a full restore. Let's go for Psychic anyway. Wow, that does pretty good damage. Probably should have just gone with that instead. It then goes down. Next up, Kabutops. We go for Psychic. It goes for Rock Slide. Would not have liked to see that hit. When Rhyhorn comes out, it gets the Surf. And when the Rock Snake comes out, it's treated to the same fate. Erica's gym is more annoying than the boss battle inside ever could be. Jumpfluff is up first, I go for Psychic and it takes off half its health, but it then uses U-turn to switch into Tangler, which goes down to a single Psychic. Next up is Victory Bell, which also goes down to a single Psychic too. Blossom is more than able to tank the first Psychic, and Blossom then uses Sunny Day. I go for a Thunder just to see how it does. Not great. It then uses Synthesis to restore some health. I figure it's better sticking to Psychic. It then goes for a Giga Drain, which doesn't do too much damage. It then resorts to Solar Beam. I throw in another Thunder. Soon, we're just in annoying back and forth. So I keep trying Thunder to get the paralysis, which eventually does happen. I was a little concerned about my Psychic uses here, so opted to spam some other moves instead. Eventually, I do use a Psychic, then finish it off with a Surf. Jumpfluff is back, and swiftly falls to a final Psychic. I could have set up Blizzard for that battle, and it would have gone a lot smoother, honestly. I just couldn't be bothered. Now, in Blaine's gym, there are 3 mandatory trainers that stop us from reaching him. From the previous battle with Erica, we still have Surf in our move roster. All his Magcargo requires is 1 Surf to go down. Next up is Magmar. Again, another Surf, but it's not a one-hit KO. This gives Blaine time to use a full restore. I go for Psychic to push it out of healing range, then seeing how it's so effective, I just go for another one and knock out the Magmar. However, because Magmar set up Sunny Day, when the Rapidash comes out and I hit it with a Surf, it only does around a third. Rapidash then goes for Overheat, which with Sunny Day does an impressive amount of damage, so I'm there using Roost to stay healed up. Then, when the Sunny Day finally fades, I can use Surf to knock it out. On to Vermilion and Saffron. Now, I chose Lieutenant Surge first because we can finally teach Lugia Earthquake, a move that we will need to keep until the final battle with Red. As for Surge's Gym, as long as the cans with switches are next to each other, then you can simply avoid the battles in here. As for Guile himself, he sends out his Raichu first. However, its poor defense means that just one Earthquake is enough to... or not. And we then get paralyzed. Well, it shouldn't be too difficult. Full restore from Surge. Hopefully Earthquake is a range, if I can just get it off. Nope. Better heal. And there's Quick Attack. Clowned on by a Raichu. Let's try that again. Earthquake is a more favorable range this time. I believe I may have equipped the Soft Sand. It takes out Raichu. One of the 2 electrodes comes out. I get an Earthquake off. And it goes down, as does the second electrode. His Electabuzz is slightly bulkier than other Pokemon that have come before, so I'm not too convinced that Earthquake will be enough. And I'm right. Electabuzz is left with a morsel of HP. Combined with its Citrus Berry, it restores some health, but it's not enough. Surge's final Pokemon is a Magneton, and I'm expecting better results here. Just one Earthquake is enough, thankfully, and that's Surge done with. For Sabrina, I'm thinking that with Earthquake, we should be in a better position to deal with her Pokemon because of their lower physical defense. Her first Pokemon is an Espeon. I go for Earthquake, and even though it's a critical hit, it still doesn't knock it out. Espeon then goes for Calm Mind to up its special defense and attack. Sabrina then goes for a full restore, as you might expect. I go for a Surf. Espeon uses Shadow Ball, and with the Calm Mind boost, it does a nasty amount of damage to Lugia. However, I opt to go with a final Earthquake with the intention of using Roost on her next Pokemon, Mr. Mime. Roost goes off fine. I then opt for Earthquake. I really don't want to see Mr. Mime use Reflect. Fortunately, it goes for Light Screen first. This gives me enough space to use Earthquake and deal with it. Next is perhaps Sabrina's most dangerous Pokemon, the Alakazam. I start off with a Roost, and the funny thing is, her Alakazam's moveset isn't that great. It has Psychic, of course, and Reflect, which can be a little annoying, but it also has Skill Swap and Energy Ball, which seem, well, not great to be honest. Obviously, we're Psychic, so its Psychic does very little. I go for an Earthquake, which does more than half, but its Citrus Berry brings it back up a little. Alakazam then uses Reflect, which seems a little too late now. However, Sabrina has a full restore. Annoying. I went for a Surf, which didn't do half bad, so I go for another one. Apparently, Sabrina is a fan of that too, as she uses another full restore. Again, I go for Surf, and then once again, I go for one more Roost, just to be on the safe side. Eventually, however, I use the final Surf, and that's the end of that. With all the badges collected, we can finally persuade Blue to return to Radiant City. There are, as you'd be surprised to find out, I'm sure, no mandatory battles in his gym. You can head straight to Blue. And as you may have noticed, the levels of the gym leaders in Kanto have been upped slightly, which was one of the main issues with the OG games. Obviously, for us, we want to be battling as high a level Pokemon as possible, but we don't want them so high level that we really can't progress. Back to Blue. And what always makes him a challenge, aside from the level of his Pokemon, is the diversity in his team. He's definitely got all the main bases covered. There's an Exeggutor, Arcanine, Rhydon, Gyarados, Machamp, and finally a Pidgeot. In my first attempts at Blue, I kept the same moveset as we used against Surge and Sabrina: Earthquake, Surf, Roost, and Psychic. He typically sends out his Exeggutor first, and unfortunately we already have no moves which are great against it. I try Earthquake just to see what happens, and the results are as you'd expect. It then likes to use Trick Room, ensuring the slowest Pokemon then goes first. Using that advantage, Exeggutor then likes to hit you with Hypnosis, followed by Psychic, and while its moveset is not completely devastating against us, by using moves like Hypnosis and Leaf Storm, the latter of which lowers its special attack, it's just a very protracted battle. And Blue is also willing to use full restores on his Pokemon. So I end up just brute forcing my way through the first battle. I debate whether I should teach Ancient Power, but decide no. The 10% boost, while extremely nice, is just so rare a thing to count on that it's not worth it. Next, when Rhydon comes out, we have a much easier time against it by using Surf for a one-hit KO, then Blue brings out Gyarados. Psychic seems like the best and only play, really, but Gyarados has Ice Fang, which does a fair bit of damage against Lugia. It then goes for Dragon Dance, which combined with Ice Fang is not the combo we want to see. However, despite that, Psychic is enough to finish it off. Next up is Machamp, and I'm thinking that Psychic is more than enough to deal with it, but the Machamp has Stone Edge, Not only are we weak to that, but it has a high crit rate too, and I'm confident that one crit is all Machamp needs for us. Thankfully, though it does get off a few stone edges, none of them crit, allowing us to send it packing. Arcanine, again, we have the advantage against, but I go for Roost. It goes for Roar, which is annoying. I then manage to hit it with Surf. It uses Flare Blitz. I get burned. I think I'm going to heal, but then it uses Extreme Speed, and that's the end of that. So not a great first battle, to be honest. Lots of room for improvement though. I try things again, Unchained, and I do manage to get past Arcanine this time. Annoying, it used Roar again, so Geodude gets like a million levels. But anyway, after Arcanine, we have Pidgeot. I go for Psychic. It uses Whirlwind. Our Geodude is just gobbling up this experience. I bring Lugia back. I use Roost. It has Return, which is pretty interesting. However, even though we eventually use our last Roost, we do manage to knock Pidgeot out. Now, we can say that's done, right? We beat Blue, but technically we didn't do it alone. Our other Pokemon got dragged into battle, meaning it wasn't solo, even if they put us in a worse position. So I opt to do things again. I get rid of all my other party and start over. However, it's pretty funny because my luck really wasn't holding, and it took me several tries to be back in a better position. That Stone Edge crit that I was worried about with Machamp before actually came true and knocked Lugia out of the sky. And it happened twice in a row too. So by this time, I kind of don't like the idea of just relying on brute force, so I opt to change up my moves by getting rid of Surf and bringing in Thunder. Honestly, against Executor, we're still not doing great damage, but Thunder and Psychic are enough. However, where Surf against Rhydon used to be a one-shot, it's now a two-shot with Psychic. Maybe I should have gone with Earthquake, but I was expecting higher defense to tank it. Anyway, it uses Stone Edge, which does quite a bit of damage. Going into Gyarados, I know I have to heal. Its Gyarados then uses Return. Okay. It then uses Dragon Dance. However, as long as Thunder hits, there we go. It's a one-hit KO. Psychic is enough for Machamp, but we don't want that Stone Edge crit. Thankfully, we don't get it, but are still on pretty low HP by the time the second Psychic comes along. But Blue uses a full restore. Even though I did just use Psychic, I'm confident I can outspeed it for the heal, but still can't get that crit or we're toast. We eventually deal with it, and then on to Arcanine. Both Gyarados and Arcanine using Intimidate isn't great because we need Earthquake. But I start off with Roost. It goes for Flare Blitz, it just keeps going for Flare Blitz, so I'm happy to simply heal with Roost while it takes recoil damage, with the hope being that I can get into range where Earthquake will take it down. Instead, perhaps against my better judgment, I go for Psychic, which leaves it with a tiny bit of health, but it's already locked into Flare Blitz and the recoil finishes it off. Finally, Pidgeot, and I'm happy to heal while it attacks because I know it can't do much. I'm just banking on getting a good Thunder off to put it down. Even though it's super effective, it only does over half damage. But I get the paralysis, and I hope it's not within Blue's healing range. That's if he still has full restores. It uses a Citrus Berry to heal instead. I go for another Thunder, still a little unsure, but it proves enough. Now that's Blue dealt with. No experience for you, Geodude. Now, finally, it's time to battle Red. Well, not quite yet. What we need to do first is a little prep. We need all the rare candies we can find, and since we have all the badges gaining Rock Climb, we can pick up quite a few. We need to be level 74 minimum, at least, and I'll explain why that's important. With the battles that we've encountered, mandatory battles, this is the highest level that Lugia can naturally be, if we discard things like the Lucky Egg. Using the rare candies, I want Lugia to be as high level as possible. Right now, with the candies we have, that is level 74. By now, Lugia has learned Recover, meaning that if we wanted to change our moveset, we can do it confidently. Now, I wanted to buy some stat items to boost Lugia's special defense and offense. However, way back when I mentioned the matchup brace, this is where it came back to bite me in the ass. Lugia would not accept any stat items, meaning I'd used up all my EV points. Stat boosting specific items, like the Power Lens, are locked behind the Battle Frontier 2, so that was never really an option. Plus, now that I'd been through all the fights that I could, and money was finite, I chose not to redo any stats with berries. It just would have taken too much time, and in the end, I was confident that I could get through Red. Through an inordinate amount of testing and tweaking, I managed to put together the most convoluted strategy for beating Red. But let's preface this by giving some context on why Red is such a frustrating battle. First off, He is the most powerful trainer in the series with an excellent spread of Pokemon. Here's his original lineup from OG Gold and Silver, if only we were facing them. As you can see, his Pikachu is at level 81, it has attacks like Charm, which we don't really care about, it has Quick Attack, Thunderbolt and Thunder. Espeon is a frustrating one, but again, if we were facing it, it couldn't have done much against us. It's Snorlax as well, it is annoying with moves like Rest and Body Slam, as well as Amnesia, because we're special attack focused. Venusaur, level 77, again, it couldn't do much to us, nor really could its Charizard. However, its Blastoise at level 77 with moves like Blizzard potentially could have damaged us quite handily. Now, look at his team this time around. His Pikachu is level 88. It holds the Light Ball. It has Volt Tackle. Its Lapras, a bulky Pokemon, has moves like Body Slam, Brine, Blizzard, and Psychic. Blizzard, which is an absolute killer for us. Even its Snorlax has moves like Shadow Ball, Crunch, and Blizzard, all moves that are handily super effective against us. Venusaur, not so much. Frenzy Plant, Giga Drain, Sleep Powder could be annoying. Sludge Bomb too if it gets poison. Charizard, not really. It has some flare moves. Obviously it has good attack. Blastoise, Blizzard could be a problem. But moves like Focus Blast, Hydro Cannon and Flash Cannon would solely be relying on the neutral damage, even though it has a high damage output. Because Pikachu isn't even the biggest roadblock. Its Volt Tackle will one-shot Lugia, but surprisingly enough, some at least, Lugia can outspeed it. You also have the added frustration of Hail being constantly active this battle, though it can be mitigated with another weather move like Sunny Day. Because our roster is limited to Lugia, it's not feasible because we cannot use that move space. Anyway, Hail means that Blizzard, a big weakness for Lugia, will always hit. Not only that, it's not just Lapras who has access to this move, but 3 of his Pokemon, Lapras, Snorlax and Blastoise. Plus, you can get statused by Lapras's Body Slam and Pikachu's Volt Tackle too. So how on earth do we tackle this battle? Firstly, I tried this with Lugia at level 74. I'd gotten the majority of all rare candies because at the level we were at after Blue, Lugia gets absolutely murdered by Pikachu if we were to go in at level 54. So for attempt number 1, our moveset was Earthquake, Recover, Psychic and Thunder. The plan was, because Lugia outspeeds Pikachu, you can get an Earthquake off and one-shot it without issue. But then you come to the 2 biggest roadblocks of the run, Lapras and Snorlax. Frustratingly, Lapras is a bulky Pokemon with great defenses. Thunder will do half of its HP in damage. However, 1 Blizzard from Lapras combined with Hail takes off just over 3/4 of Lugia's HP. Not only that, Thunder is a range. My god, so close. Another Blizzard from Lapras and we're done. Next time, upon getting to Lapras, I try switching things up with Thunderbolt because it's more accurate. I also teach Lugia Light Screen because I know that we can't survive those Blizzards without it. With Light Screen now active, Blizzard combined with the effects of Hail will do just under half damage to Lugia. Our Thunderbolt does slightly less than a third, which isn't great. However, after the first 2 Blizzards from Lapras, you then have to focus on healing just to stay alive. One thing in our favour is that Lapras can only use Blizzard 3 times because of Lugia's pressure. It will then typically shift to Brine or Psychic. With Thunderbolt, we're able to get past Lapras, so we're looking pretty good, right? Next, the Snorlax. Because of our weakness to ice, it will always run through its Blizzards first, and a crit from them can take off just under 200 hit points. And the funny thing is, despite Snorlax's strength being in its special defense, it's just so bulky that Earthquake does next to nothing. It then uses Blizzard, we're at 16 HP, and we get frozen. Yeah, that is a reset. Because it felt like the moves I'd chosen seemed consistent enough, I continued to persist with them through the next few attempts. We can get through the Lapras fairly consistently when Red doesn't choose to heal it anyway. The real and metaphorical roadblock, now more than ever, is the Snorlax. Not only does it have Blizzard as we mentioned, but it also has Crunch, a dark move. So even if we stall out the Blizzards, Crunch is doing a significant amount of damage. I go through maybe a dozen more battles. Sometimes Earthquake range just doesn't make it, meaning Pikachu can use Volt Tackle, which instantly KOs me. Sometimes Lapras will get a Body Slam Paralysis or Blizzard Freeze. It's not happening. So I opt to get the 2 remaining rare candies in the game. I think one was in Lugia's cave and some other place. Anyway, it takes me up to level 76. I've also decided to change my moveset, settling on a similar setup that took me through Whitney and the Kimono Sisters. Charge Beam. Also worth a mention is just improving your stats in battle in general.
Calm Mind is an awesome move, and Lugia does learn it at level 93. You can also get it from the Battle Frontier, but we can't do that. The only move available to raise our special is Charge Beam, which is more consistent than Ancient Power, trust me. I also brought back Psychic. As I mentioned in the rules, this was the reason I kept save states, because I couldn't go back to potions when I did and did not have moves. However, if I'd chosen not to, I just could have retaught it extra sensory. Anyway, I gave Psychic a PP max to bring it up to 16 PP, because I know I'm going to be rinsing it this battle. I also increased Charge Beam's PP to max at 16 to get as many boosts as possible. Finally, I increased Recover's PP to max to 16 too. With this, I think we're ready. Now, first off, you may think, where's Earthquake? You made such a fuss about it, and you just got rid of it? How do you expect to take on the Pikachu? The answer is Mommy. More specifically, if you give some of your battle winnings to your mother, she'll occasionally purchase items with them. Along with, say, the Choice Scarf and other things, she'll also pick up berries. More specifically, berries that can reduce the effectiveness of super effective moves. In our case, it's the Wakam berry. And with this berry equipped, Pikachu's Volt Tackle goes from a one-shot to half our health instead. Then, we can use a final Psychic to KO it, or have Hail finish it off. In my first attempt at the new strategy, while I did prove it could work, Lapras then gets the freeze, so I reset. Anyway, here's what happens when the stars align. I start with Psychic, Pikachu goes for Volt Tackle, another Psychic, and then Hail finishes the Pikachu off. Lapras is next. My health isn't great, but I'm confident that with Light Screen, I can take both the Blizzard, if it doesn't crit or freeze, plus the Hail, and I do at 29 HP. I then go for Recover, which puts me at 168 HP. The plan now is to just stall out the Blizzards with Recover. Once Lapras has used all its Blizzard, it usually switches to Brine. I start going for Charge Beam. We also start seeing Body Slams. That is absolutely the worst move we don't want to see. We can't really get a paralysis because it's so important we set up on the Lapras. I'm also mindful to always be setting up another Light Screen when they go down. Psychic, although not effective, can lower our special defense. Confident that I'm in a better place, I start using Charge Beam again, and luckily I'm starting to get the special attack boost that I desperately need. I know that Red will use a full restore when Lapras gets into range, and just like with Whitney's Clefairy, that's just fine because we want as many boosts as we can get, and the more we use Charge Beam, the more damage it keeps doing with the boosts. I also can't let myself get below half HP, because Lapras will use Brine, which can do a fair bit of damage. However, Lapras is now on low HP, a final Charge Beam deals with it, and we get the boost too. Next up is Snorlax, and this is where we see if this plan really paid off. I immediately go for a Psychic and it takes off nearly 3/4 of Snorlax's health, and this thing is thick AF. I do get a bit greedy and go for another. Red doesn't opt to heal, and his Snorlax goes down in 2 hits. Crazy. Next is Blastoise. I've seen it like twice this run, and this thing has Blizzard too. I can't take any chances, so I go straight for a Recover. It uses Blizzard and it's not great. At 99 HP, I think it's best just to Recover instead of going for Light Screen and maybe not making the range. It uses Blizzard again. I'm hoping I don't get frozen or a crit here. I'm happy to just use Recover, that's what the PP is for. Blastoise eventually runs out of Blizzard, it then uses Hydro Cannon, which is a decent move. However, I see my chance and decide to go with Light Screen now so that I can heal the next turn. Blastoise then uses Focus Blast. Okay, I finally managed to attack and go with Charge Beam, which finishes it off. Next up is the Charizard. I go for Charge Beam. I'm not sure how much it's going to do, but I'm surprised when I nearly get the one shot. Charizard then uses Flare Blitz, which takes me down to 74 HP and knocks it out. That's great, but I'm now at 57 HP, which isn't great. Venusaur is up next. I immediately go for the Recover. Not sure what it's going to do because I barely faced it. It goes for Sludge Bomb. I get poisoned. Light Screen wears off. Now I'm getting Hail and Poison. I go for Recover. It goes for Sludge Bomb again. I'm getting worried because this chip damage is absolutely adding up. Then there comes a point where I just think I have to see how much damage I could do against this thing. So I opt to go for Psychic. It's super effective and a one-hit KO. Don't know about the Hail, but who cares. But with that, Red is defeated. And we're done. 99 battles. That's it. That's all it took to defeat the game. That was something. I don't consider the rematches with the Elite Four, which we could have done before, nor the rematches with the gym leaders to be part of the story. Nor would I say that Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza are part of that either, though they may have helped. That took a lot of time and planning. I think the matchup race may have hindered more than it helped in the end, because you're facing mostly physical attackers in the early game, coupled with the less than ideal IVs, which further compounded things. Who knows, maybe you have a better plan. Could have trivialized the whole thing. By all means, let me know what I did wrong or how I could have improved the run. I've also included a list of the trainers I fought and their locations in the description if you're interested. Finally, I honestly don't know if the battle with Red was possible with any other moveset. I can only imagine it could be if Lugia's stats were the best in a number of areas, but when we take out being able to get the valuable TMs from places such as the Battle Frontier, we really are running with quite a limited move pool. Anyway, if you have an idea for an interesting run in the same style, let me know. And if you want to like or subscribe, go for it. Until next time, have a good one.